I think I didn't do anything wrong, just danced a little too close with my ex at my own wedding. If anything, it was harmless, until my husband handed me a thick envelope over breakfast, and suddenly nothing felt like a joke anymore. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The reception hall sparkled with fairy lights and the soft hum of celebration. I should have been the happiest woman alive, but something felt missing. Daniel, my new husband, had been polite all evening, smiling for photos, making small talk with relatives, dancing one obligatory slow dance with me before retreating to chat with his accounting colleagues. "You look bored," a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to see Ethan Mallory, my ex-boyfriend from college, looking devastatingly handsome in his navy suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and that crooked smile that used to make my heart race was still there. "Ethan, I'm so glad you could make it," I said, perhaps a bit too enthusiastically. "Though I have to admit, married life is already feeling a little predictable." He laughed, that rich sound I remembered so well. "Come on, Aurelia, it's your wedding night. You should be having fun." The band started playing The Way You Look Tonight, and couples began moving toward the dance floor. Daniel was deep in conversation with his mother, Evelyn, probably discussing tax codes or something equally thrilling. "Dance with me?" Ethan extended his hand. I glanced toward Daniel, who wasn't even looking my way. "Why not? It's just a dance." Ethan's hand was warm as he led me onto the floor. Unlike Daniel's careful, measured steps, Ethan moved with confidence, pulling me closer than was probably appropriate for a bride dancing with her ex. But it felt so good to feel desired again, to have someone's full attention. "You're still the most beautiful woman in any room," he whispered near my ear, his breath warm against my neck. I laughed, feeling giddy. "You always were a charmer." "I'm serious, Aurelia. Marriage suits you." His hand slipped lower on my back, and I didn't pull away. Around us, I could sense people watching. Aunt Margaret whispered something to Uncle Frank. My best friend Leah gave me an encouraging wink from her table, while my mother, Janice, raised her champagne glass with an amused smile. But then I caught sight of Daniel's mother, Evelyn. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes narrow with disapproval. Daniel's younger brother, Noah, looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his tie. "Relax," Ethan murmured, spinning me gracefully. "You're allowed to enjoy yourself at your own wedding." The song seemed to go on forever. Ethan's hands were confident on my waist, and I found myself leaning into him, remembering what it felt like to be with someone who made me feel alive. When he dipped me dramatically at the song's end, I threw my head back and laughed. The applause from the crowd felt distant as Ethan helped me back to my feet. That's when I saw Daniel standing at the edge of the dance floor, his face a mask of controlled emotion. Our eyes met across the room, and the joy drained from my face. "Thank you for the dance," I said quickly to Ethan, suddenly aware of how this must have looked. "Any time," he replied with that infuriating smile. I walked back toward Daniel, my heart pounding. He didn't say anything, just nodded politely as I approached. "That looked fun," he said quietly, his voice carefully neutral. "It was just a dance, Daniel. Don't be so dramatic." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, just a dance." Evelyn appeared beside us, her face flushed with champagne and indignation. "Aurelia, dear, perhaps you should spend more time with your new husband instead of old friends." "Oh, Evelyn, don't be such a prude," my mother Janice interjected, appearing with a fresh drink. "Aurelia's just having fun. She's always been spirited." "Spirited," Evelyn repeated, the word dripping with disdain. Little Mila, Daniel's 7-year-old daughter from his first marriage, tugged on my dress. "Mommy Aurelia, why was that man holding you like Daddy does?" The innocent question hit like a slap. I knelt down to her level, forcing a smile. "We were just dancing, sweetie, like friends do." But Mila's confused expression told me she wasn't buying it any more than the adults were. Daniel placed a protective hand on Mila's shoulder. "Come on, kiddo, let's get some cake." As they walked away, I caught Ethan's eye across the room. He raised his glass to me in a subtle toast, and despite everything, I felt a thrill of excitement. What was wrong with having a little fun at my own wedding? 3 weeks into married life, the routine was already suffocating me. Daniel left for his accounting firm at 7:30 sharp every morning, came home at 6:15, helped Mila with homework, and was asleep by 10. Weekends were for grocery shopping, lawn care, and visiting his mother. I found myself thinking about that dance with Ethan more and more. "You seem distracted lately," Daniel said over breakfast one Thursday morning. He was reading the financial section while eating his precisely portioned oatmeal. "I'm fine," I replied, scrolling through my phone. Just adjusting to married life. That's when I saw it. A Facebook message from Ethan. Hope you're surviving domestic bliss. Coffee sometime, for old time's sake? My heart skipped. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed back, I'd love that. How about tomorrow after work? Who are you texting so early? Daniel asked, looking up from his paper. Just Leah, I lied smoothly. She wants to grab lunch this weekend. Daniel nodded and returned to his reading. He trusted me completely, which made this both easier and somehow worse. The next evening, I told Daniel I was working late, a root canal that ran long. The lie came so easily it surprised me. Ethan was waiting at Corner Cafe, looking relaxed in jeans and a button-down shirt. He stood when he saw me, and for a moment, it felt like we were college students again, meeting between classes. You look tired, he said, pulling out my chair. Thanks, that's exactly what every woman wants to hear. I laughed, but he was right. The stress of pretending everything was perfect at home was exhausting. I mean it in a good way. Like you're too interesting for suburban life? There it was, that ability to make me feel special, understood. Daniel never said things like that. We talked for 2 hours. About our jobs, our dreams, the paths our lives had taken. Ethan was working in marketing now, traveling frequently, living in a downtown loft. His life sounded exciting, full of possibility. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together? He asked as we prepared to leave. Sometimes, I admitted, though it was more than sometimes. We were good together, Aurelia. Really good. His hand brushed mine as he helped me with my coat, and I didn't pull away. When I got home at 9:30, Daniel was helping Mila with a school project at the kitchen table. How was the root canal? He asked without looking up. Complicated. Sorry I'm so late. No problem. I saved you some dinner. His kindness made the guilt worse, but not enough to stop me from texting Ethan later that night. Thanks for tonight. I needed that. Any time. You deserve to be happy, Aurelia. The meetings became regular. Every Wednesday, sometimes Fridays too, always at different places, the cafe, a wine bar downtown, once at the park where we used to walk in college. I told Daniel I was working extra hours, picking up shifts, meeting with friends. He never questioned it. You've been working a lot lately, he mentioned one evening as we got ready for bed. The dental practice is busy. Dr. Morrison is thinking of expanding. Another lie. Dr. Morrison was actually cutting hours because business was slow. Maybe you should take a vacation day soon. We could take Mila to the zoo. Maybe, I said, but I was already thinking about my next meeting with Ethan. The lies were piling up, but I felt more alive than I had in months. Ethan made me laugh, made me feel desirable. He remembered things about me that Daniel never seemed to notice. How I always ordered dessert first when I was stressed. How I twisted my hair when I was thinking. You're glowing, Leah observed when we met for actual lunch one Saturday. Marriage agrees with you. I almost told her about Ethan, but something held me back. Instead, I just smiled and changed the subject. It was Evelyn who first voiced suspicions. She'd started dropping by more often, always with some excuse, bringing cookies for Mila, returning a borrowed book, checking on how we were settling in. You seem to be working quite late these days, she commented one evening when I arrived home to find her still there. The dental field is demanding, I replied coolly. I'm sure it is. Her tone suggested she wasn't sure at all. That night Daniel was quiet as we watched television. During a commercial break, he muted the sound and turned to me. Is everything okay between us, Aurelia? The question caught me off guard. Of course. Why would you ask that? You seem distant lately, like your mind is somewhere else. I'm just tired from work. You're being paranoid. The word paranoid hit its mark. Daniel flinched slightly and turned back to the TV. But I noticed him watching me more carefully after that. Noticed him checking the time when I came home late. Noticed him glancing at my phone when it buzzed. The next Wednesday, as I was getting ready to leave for another meeting with Ethan, Daniel asked casually, Which restaurant did you say you were meeting Leah at? I hadn't said, and we both knew it. The new Italian place on 5th Street, I said quickly. I thought Leah was allergic to tomatoes. My stomach dropped. She was. They have other options. Daniel nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. That evening with Ethan was different. More charged, more dangerous. He'd chosen a dimly lit wine bar across town, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. You're taking risks meeting me, he said, his hand covering mine on the table. Maybe I like risks. The Aurelia I knew always did. When he walked me to my car, he pulled me close in the shadows between streetlights. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me, and I wasn't sure I would have stopped him. "This is getting complicated," I whispered. "The best things usually are." I drove home with my heart racing and my phone buzzing with texts from him. But when I pulled into our driveway, I saw Daniel silhouetted in the living room window, waiting. He was holding something in his hand, a piece of paper. As I got closer, I realized it was our phone bill. Sunday dinner at our house had become a weekly tradition since the wedding. Daniel's family would come over. Evelyn, Noah, sometimes Noah's girlfriend Sarah. It was supposed to be a bonding experience, but lately it felt more like an interrogation. This particular Sunday, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel had been unusually quiet since the phone bill incident, and I could feel Evelyn's disapproving stare every time I spoke. "The pot roast is delicious, Aurelia," Noah said, trying to break the uncomfortable silence. "Thank you. It's my mother's recipe." "Speaking of your mother," Evelyn said, setting down her fork with deliberate precision, "I ran into Janet Morrison at the grocery store yesterday." My blood ran cold. Janet Morrison was Dr. Morrison's wife. "Oh?" I managed to keep my voice steady. "She mentioned that the dental office has been quite slow lately, said her husband has been sending people home early most days." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Daniel stopped chewing, his eyes fixed on his plate. "Well, I've been picking up extra work," I said, forcing a laugh. "You know how it is. There's always something to do." "I'm sure there is," Evelyn replied, her tone arctic. Mila, bless her, chose that moment to spill her juice, creating a distraction as we all jumped up to clean it. But when we settled back down, the tension remained. "Daddy, why is everyone being weird?" Mila asked with the brutal honesty only children possess. "No one's being weird, sweetheart," Daniel said softly, but his voice sounded strained. "Yes, they are. Grandma Evelyn looks mad, and you look sad." Out of the mouths of babes. "I'm not mad, darling," Evelyn said, but her smile was forced. "I'm just concerned about some rumors I've been hearing." "What kind of rumors?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "About you and a certain gentleman at your wedding. People are talking, Aurelia." My mother Janice chose that moment to arrive for dessert, breezing in with her usual dramatic flair. "Sorry I'm late, everyone. Traffic was murder." She immediately sensed the tension. "My goodness, you all look like someone died. What's going on?" "We were just discussing some concerns about Aurelia's extracurricular activities," Evelyn said primly. "Extracurricular activities?" Janice laughed. "What is she? In high school? Aurelia's a grown woman. She can have friends." "Friends don't usually require lying about work schedules," Evelyn shot back. "Now wait just a minute." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I don't have to justify my friendships to anyone. Daniel, are you going to let your mother attack me like this?" Daniel finally looked up, his eyes tired and sad. "Are they just friendships, Aurelia?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "I can't believe you're taking her side," I said, my voice rising. "Your own wife." "I'm not taking sides. I'm asking a simple question." "A simple question? You're basically accusing me of cheating." Mila started to cry. The sound cut through the adult tension like a knife, reminding us all that there was a child in the middle of this mess. "Look what you've done," I snapped at Evelyn. "You've upset Mila with your gossip and accusations." "I've upset her?" Evelyn's voice rose to match mine. "You're the one who's been sneaking around, lying to your husband, making a fool of yourself and this family." "That's enough," Noah said firmly, reaching for Mila. "Come on, kiddo. Let's go watch cartoons in the other room." But Mila clung to Daniel instead. "Daddy, why is everyone yelling?" "Because some people don't know how to mind their own business," I said, glaring at Evelyn. "My son is my business," she fired back, "and watching you humiliate him is breaking my heart." "Humiliate him? By having coffee with an old friend? Is that what you're calling it now?" Daniel stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. The crash silenced everyone. "Stop," he said quietly, but his voice carried more authority than all our shouting. "Just stop." He picked up Mila, who wrapped her arms around his neck. "I'm taking Mila upstairs. When I come back down, I want everyone gone except Aurelia." The silence after he left was deafening. Evelyn gathered her purse with sharp, angry movements. "I hope you're happy," she said to me. "I hope whatever you think you're getting from this friendship is worth destroying your marriage and traumatizing that little girl." "Daniel is being jealous and controlling," I protested, but even to my own ears it sounded weak. "Daniel is being a husband who loves his wife and doesn't understand why she's lying to him," Noah said quietly. "And honestly, Aurelia, neither do I." My mother was the only one who stayed after the others left, but even she seemed shaken by the confrontation. "Maybe you should be more careful, honey," she said as she helped me clear the dishes. "I know you're just having fun, but appearances matter." "Since when do you care about appearances?" "Since my daughter's marriage started falling apart 3 weeks after the wedding." When Daniel came back downstairs, his face was set in stone. He walked past me to the kitchen counter where his phone was charging and started typing. "Who are you texting?" I asked. "My lawyer," he said without looking up. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Your lawyer? Daniel, you're being ridiculous. This is all just a misunderstanding." He finished typing and set the phone down, finally meeting my eyes. "Is it, Aurelia? Because I'd really like to understand. Help me understand why my wife needs to lie about where she's going and who she's seeing. Help me understand why our phone bill shows dozens of calls and texts to a number I don't recognize. Help me understand why you come home smelling like wine when you're supposed to be at work." Each word was like a nail in a coffin I'd built myself. I can explain everything." "I'm sure you can. You're very good at explanations. But I'm tired of explanations, Aurelia. I want the truth." "The truth?" Such a simple concept, but it felt impossible to grasp. "The truth is that you've been neglecting me," I said instead. "You work all the time. You never want to do anything fun. You treat me like I'm just another item on your to-do list." "So this is my fault?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." He picked up his phone again and headed toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" "To pack a bag. I'll be staying at Noah's for a while." "Daniel, wait. Let's talk about this." He paused at the bottom of the stairs. "We had months to talk, Aurelia. Years, if you count the time we dated before we got married. But you chose to talk to someone else instead." After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our family dinner, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Hope you're having a good evening." For the first time since this all started, I didn't text him back. Daniel stayed at Noah's for 3 days. 3 days of me rattling around our house alone, jumping every time the phone rang, hoping it would be him calling to say he was coming home. Mila was staying there too, and the silence was unbearable. On Wednesday evening, what would have been another meeting with Ethan, Daniel finally came home. He walked in while I was making dinner, acting as if nothing had happened. "Smells good," he said, hanging his keys on the hook by the door. I made your favorite, chicken parmesan." "Thank you." We ate in silence, the clink of silverware against plates unnaturally loud. Every few minutes, I'd catch him looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. "How's Mila?" I finally asked. "Confused. She keeps asking when she can come home. This is her home." "Is it?" The question was quiet, but it cut deep. After dinner, Daniel helped me clean up, another return to normalcy that felt anything but normal. When we finished, he poured himself a glass of wine and sat down at the kitchen table. "We need to talk, Aurelia." My heart started pounding. "Okay. I want you to tell me about Ethan Mallory." The name hung between us like a loaded gun. I'd been preparing for this conversation for days, but now that it was here, all my carefully rehearsed explanations evaporated. "What about him?" "Don't." Daniel's voice was sharp. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." I sat down across from him, my hands shaking slightly. "He's an old friend. We've been catching up occasionally." "Catching up?" "Yes." "Is that what you call 47 phone calls and over 300 text messages in the past month?" The specific numbers hit me like a slap. He'd done his homework. "We have a lot to catch up on." "I'm sure you do." Daniel took a sip of his wine, his eyes never leaving my face. "Tell me about your work schedule." "What about it?" "You've been working late a lot lately. Extra hours, you said." "The practice has been busy." "Has it?" He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Because I called Dr. Morrison yesterday. Interesting conversation." My stomach dropped to my shoes. He was very surprised to hear about all the overtime you've been putting in, especially since he's been sending people home early most days because business is so slow. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. He also mentioned that you requested to leave early last Wednesday, something about a dentist appointment of your own. Wednesday. The day I'd spent 2 hours with Ethan at the wine bar. I can explain? Can you? Because I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear how my wife needs to lie to me about where she's going and who she's seeing. I'd love to understand why she's having secret phone conversations with her ex-boyfriend and lying about working late. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Aurelia? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife is having an affair. The word affair hit me like a physical blow. It's not an affair. We're just friends. Friends don't lie to their spouses about seeing each other. You wouldn't understand. You'd be jealous and controlling. Jealous and controlling? Daniel's voice rose for the first time. I'm jealous and controlling because I expect my wife to be honest with me. You're making this into something it's not. Am I? Then prove it. Show me your phone. My heart stopped. What? Your phone. If you're just friends, if there's nothing to hide, show me your text messages with him. I clutched my phone protectively. I don't have to prove anything to you. No, you don't, but a wife who had nothing to hide would want to prove it. We stared at each other across the table, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. This is ridiculous, I said finally. You're being paranoid and insecure. I married you, didn't I? I chose you. Did you? Because it feels like you're choosing him every time you lie to me to see him. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm just trying to have a friendship that you're determined to turn into something sordid. A friendship, Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call dancing with him at our wedding like you wished you'd married him instead? It was just a dance. It was humiliating. Do you know what it felt like to watch my new wife in another man's arms, looking happier than she'd looked with me all day? His words hit me like a slap because they were true. I had felt happier in that moment, more alive, more desired. I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. Am I? Then end it. What? End the friendship. Block his number. Stop seeing him. You can't tell me who I can and can't be friends with. I'm not telling you. I'm asking you. As your husband, I'm asking you to choose our marriage over whatever this is with him. The request was simple, reasonable even, but the thought of never seeing Ethan again, never feeling that spark of excitement, made me feel like I was suffocating. I shouldn't have to choose. The fact that you see it as a choice tells me everything I need to know. Daniel stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet and sad. I love you, Aurelia. I thought you loved me too. I do love you. Do you? Because love doesn't lie. Love doesn't sneak around. Love doesn't make excuses for hurting the person it claims to care about. You're being unfair. Marriage doesn't mean giving up all your friendships. No, it doesn't. But it does mean being honest about them. It means not lying to your spouse. It means not having secret relationships with ex-boyfriends. He turned back to face me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. I would have understood if you'd just told me. If you'd said you wanted to reconnect with an old friend, I would have been fine with it. But the lying, the sneaking around, the way you look at him, it's killing me, Aurelia. Daniel, I can't do this anymore. I can't live wondering where you really are when you say you're working late. I can't go to bed every night wondering if you're thinking about him instead of me. So, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. I'm filing for separation. The words hit me like a physical blow. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Over a friendship? You're going to throw away our marriage over a friendship? I'm not throwing away anything. You already did that. He walked past me toward the stairs, then paused. I'll be back tomorrow to get more of my things. I think it's better if I'm not here when you get home from work. Your real job, I mean. After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, the silence deafening. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan asking if I wanted to meet for drinks. For the first time since this all started, I realized I might have made a terrible mistake. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to block his number. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who asked for my signature and photo ID. The return address was from Morrison, Blake & Associates, a law firm I'd never heard of. Inside were papers I couldn't quite understand at first. Legal terminology swam before my eyes. Petition for legal separation, division of assets, custody arrangement. Daniel wasn't bluffing. I called him immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. You got the papers, he said without preamble. Daniel, this is insane. We can work this out. Can we? Because I've been waiting for you to work it out, Aurelia. I've been waiting for you to choose our marriage. I have chosen our marriage? Have you? When? When you met him for drinks last Friday while I thought you were at Leah's? When you texted him good morning before you even spoke to me yesterday? When you lied to my face about working late again? Each accusation hit like a physical blow. How did he know about Friday? About the text messages? How are you spying on me? I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. The words knocked the breath out of me. You what? I hired someone to find out what my wife was really doing when she said she was working late. The photos are quite enlightening. Photos, My stomach lurched. You had me followed. I had my wife's lies investigated. There's a difference. I sank into a kitchen chair, the papers scattered in front of me. Daniel, please, let's talk about this like adults. We tried talking. You chose to keep lying. I wasn't lying about anything important. You were lying about everything, Aurelia. Where you were, who you were with, what you were doing. You looked me in the eye and lied to me every single day for months. It was just coffee, just talking. Was it? Because the photos from last Friday show a lot more than talking. My blood ran cold. Friday night, Ethan had walked me to my car. We'd stood close, talking quietly. He'd touched my face, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. For a moment, I'd thought he might kiss me. I'd wanted him to. Nothing happened. Something was about to happen. And even if it hadn't, the fact that you wanted it to is enough. I couldn't argue with that because it was true. I want to see Mila, I said instead. That's covered in the papers. Supervised visitation pending the custody hearing. Supervised visitation. She's my daughter, too. She's my daughter. You're her stepmother. And right now, you're not providing a stable environment for a 7-year-old child. The legal distinction cut deep. Mila had been calling me Mommy Aurelia since the wedding. I'd been helping with homework, braiding her hair, reading bedtime stories. You can't keep her from me. I'm not keeping her from you. I'm protecting her from the chaos you've created. She's already confused and upset about why I moved out. She doesn't need to know that it's because her stepmother was sneaking around with another man. I wasn't sneaking around. Then what would you call it? I had no answer for that. After Daniel hung up, I called the only person I thought would understand, Leah. He's being completely unreasonable, she said after I explained the situation. So you had coffee with an ex-boyfriend. Big deal. Men do it all the time. That's what I said. He's just insecure. This will blow over. But even as Leah said the words, I could hear the doubt in her voice. My mother was less supportive. Aurelia, honey, what were you thinking? She said when I called her next. You're a newlywed. You should be focusing on your marriage, not gallivanting around with old boyfriends. Since when are you the voice of moral authority? Since my daughter started making choices that could ruin her life. Do you know how hard it is to find a good man like Daniel? Do you know how many women would kill to have what you're throwing away? I'm not throwing anything away. Aren't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to lose your husband, your home, and your relationship with Mila over some fantasy about your college boyfriend. That night, I met Ethan at our usual wine bar. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that Daniel was overreacting. He hired a private investigator? Ethan laughed, but it sounded forced. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? That's what I said. I mean, it's not like we're having an affair. Exactly. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. What were we having? What was this, if not an affair? Maybe we should cool things down for a while, Ethan said, not meeting my eyes. Until this blows over. Cool things down? Just temporarily. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. My marriage is already in trouble. That's not your fault, isn't it? He finally looked at me. Be honest, Aurelia. What did you think was going to happen here? Did you think we were just going to be friends forever? The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to face. I don't know what I thought. I think you do know. I think you know exactly what this is, and so do I. The question is, what are you going to do about it? When I got home that night, I found Daniel in our living room, packing books into boxes. What are you doing? Getting my things. The house is yours until the divorce is finalized, then we'll sell it and split the proceeds. Divorce? The word hit me like a slap. The papers said separation. The separation is just the first step. I'm filing for divorce next month. I watched him pack our life into cardboard boxes, the books we'd bought together, the picture frames that held our wedding photos, the coffee mugs we'd picked out at the farmer's market. This is really happening. Yes, it is. What about counseling? What about trying to work things out? Daniel paused in his packing and looked at me with tired eyes. Counseling only works if both people want to save the marriage. Do you want to save our marriage, Aurelia? Of course I do. Then end it with him. Block his number. Tell him you never want to see him again. The request was simple, but it felt impossible. I need time to think. Daniel nodded slowly and went back to packing. That's what I thought. The next morning, I woke up to find the house empty except for me. Daniel had taken everything that mattered to him, including the framed photo of us from our honeymoon. All that was left were the divorce papers and the growing realization that I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to block Ethan's number. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble floors and echoing voices, the weight of justice pressing down from every direction. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, wearing my most conservative dress and trying to look like a woman who deserved to keep her family intact. Daniel sat across the hall with his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Blake who looked like she ate cheating wives for breakfast. He wouldn't look at me. My lawyer, a young man named Kevin Chen, who I'd hired at the last minute, kept shuffling through papers and looking nervous. "Remember," he said for the third time, "focus on your relationship with Mila. Emphasize your role as a stepmother, your involvement in her daily care." But I could barely focus on his words. All I could think about was how we'd gotten here. The past month had been a nightmare. Daniel had frozen our joint accounts, leaving me scrambling to pay bills. Mila's supervised visits were awkward affairs at a community center, with a social worker taking notes on everything I said and did. Worst of all, Ethan had disappeared. After our last conversation at the wine bar, he'd stopped returning my calls. When I'd finally tracked him down at his office, he'd been polite but distant. "This is getting too complicated, Aurelia," he'd said. "I think it's better if we don't see each other for a while." "A while? How long is a while?" "I don't know. Maybe this was a mistake." A mistake. All of it. The lies, the secret meetings, the destruction of my marriage had been a mistake. "Fenwick versus Fenwick," the bailiff called. We filed into the courtroom, Daniel and his lawyer on one side, me and Kevin on the other. The judge was an older woman with silver hair and no-nonsense eyes. Patricia Blake stood first, her voice crisp and professional. "Your Honor, my client is seeking dissolution of marriage based on irreconcilable differences, specifically his wife's ongoing extramarital affair. We have substantial evidence of Mrs. Fenwick's deceptive behavior and request primary custody of the minor child, Mila Fenwick." "Objection," Kevin said weakly. "There's no proof of an actual affair." "Your Honor," Patricia continued, "I'd like to present Exhibit A." She handed the judge a thick folder, then distributed copies to our table. My heart sank as I saw what it contained. Photos of me and Ethan at various locations, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts, credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and bars I'd claimed were work meetings. The evidence was damning. "Mrs. Fenwick," the judge said, looking at me over her glasses, "can you explain these photographs?" I stood on shaking legs. "Your Honor, Mr. Mallory is an old friend. We were just catching up." "Catching up requires this level of secrecy and deception." My husband can be jealous. I didn't want him to worry unnecessarily." "So you lied to him about your whereabouts on multiple occasions?" "I didn't lie exactly. I just didn't give him all the details." The judge's expression suggested she wasn't buying it. Patricia stood again. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Daniel Fenwick to the stand." Daniel walked to the witness stand with quiet dignity. He looked tired, older than his 34 years. "Mr. Fenwick, can you describe your wife's behavior over the past several months?" "She became secretive," Daniel said quietly. "She would claim to be working late, but her employer confirmed she was leaving early. She received constant phone calls and texts that she would hide from me. When I asked about them, she would become defensive and accuse me of being controlling." "How did this behavior affect your marriage?" "It destroyed it. I couldn't trust anything she said. I felt like I was living with a stranger." "And how has it affected your daughter?" Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "Mila is confused and scared. She doesn't understand why I moved out, or why her stepmother can only see her with supervision now. She's been having nightmares." I wanted to object, to say that wasn't my fault, but the words stuck in my throat. When it was my turn to testify, I tried to explain myself, to make the judge understand that I'd never meant for things to go this far. "Your Honor, I love my husband and my stepdaughter. I made some poor choices, but I never had a physical affair. I was just lonely." "Lonely?" The judge's eyebrows rose. "You were lonely 3 weeks after your wedding?" "Marriage is an adjustment. Daniel works long hours, and I felt neglected." "So you sought attention from another man?" "It wasn't like that. Ethan and I have history. He understood me in a way that Daniel didn't." Even as I said the words, I realized how terrible they sounded. "Mrs. Fenwick, do you understand that marriage requires honesty and commitment? Do you understand that your actions have consequences not just for you, but for a 7-year-old child who has already experienced the trauma of her parents' divorce?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand that lying to your spouse, sneaking around with another man, and prioritizing your own desires over your family's well-being demonstrates a fundamental lack of judgment? Each word was like a nail in my coffin. I understand that I made mistakes. Mistakes? The judge's voice was sharp. Mrs. Fenwick, you systematically deceived your husband for months. You carried on an emotional affair with another man. You put your own gratification above the stability of a child's home. These aren't mistakes. They're choices. When the judge announced her decision, her words were like a death sentence. I hereby grant the petition for dissolution of marriage. Given the evidence of Mrs. Fenwick's deceptive behavior and poor judgment, I award primary physical custody of Mila Fenwick to her father, Daniel Fenwick. Mrs. Fenwick will be granted supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of counseling and demonstration of stable behavior. Regarding division of assets, given Mrs. Fenwick's breach of marital trust, I award 60% of marital assets to Mr. Fenwick, with 40% to Mrs. Fenwick. The family home will be sold and proceeds divided accordingly. Furthermore, Mrs. Fenwick will be responsible for all legal fees incurred in this proceeding. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through my chest. As people filed out of the courtroom, I sat frozen in my chair. Daniel walked past without looking at me, his mother's arm around his shoulders. Noah followed, shaking his head sadly. I'm sorry, Aurelia, Kevin said, gathering his papers. The evidence was just too overwhelming. I walked out of the courthouse alone, into a gray afternoon that matched my mood perfectly. My phone buzzed, a text from Leah asking how it went. I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain that you've lost everything for something that turned out to be nothing? Ethan was probably at his downtown loft, living his exciting life, while I faced the prospect of supervised visits with my stepdaughter and a studio apartment I could barely afford. The man I'd thought understood me better than my husband had disappeared the moment things got complicated. The husband who'd loved me unconditionally was gone forever, taking with him the little girl who used to call me Mommy Aurelia. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching Daniel drive away with his family, and finally understood what I'd really lost. It wasn't just a marriage. It wasn't just a house or half of our assets. I'd lost the chance to be the person I'd always claimed I wanted to be. A wife, a mother, a woman worthy of love and trust. And for what? For the thrill of feeling desired by a man who'd never had any intention of building a life with me? The judge had been right. These weren't mistakes. They were choices. And now I had to live with the consequences. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,